having beta readers and running all your stuff past other people, and like this whole thing of like just trying to make a story that makes as many people happy as possible seems like such a recipe for blandness. I mean, I reserve the right to change my mind in the future when my fucking technique completely fails and I have to recalibrate everything. But for now, that's how I feel. Of like, it's like there's an old Joss Whedon quote where he said, he doesn't give people what they want. He gives them what they need. And I don't think it's coincidence that he is such a unique writer, and that most Joss Whedon shows are just, whatever dumb shit most of the time. But every once in a while they hit in that big way that just no other shows do, that no other popular writer does. And it's because he's trying to express something, that idea that he's trying to give you what you need. You don't even know that you need it, but you do, because he's reaching into, like a classic example is that Buffy episode, The Body, about Buffy's mom dying. And that's obviously pulled from Joss's own mom dying. And that's what you got to do, You've got to find what gets you teary-eyed. Find the idea that means a lot to you. And that's what you've got to present. Because you can't just give people what they want. It's just going to be another... it might be, even if it's a good book, even if on the surface it's like, hey, what a fun book, I liked that book. But then it just evaporates and it means nothing. To me, the idea, what I'm trying to do here, is a story that doesn't evaporate, something that sticks with you because it came from a weird angle, it hit you with something you didn't expect, and you realize that it is something that's been lodged in you, some idea, some aspect of life that other people haven't been reaching and haven't been touching and haven't been addressing. And finally someone does. That's the kind of stories that I like, and that's the kind of story I want to make. Which also ties in, I think, to the idea of how do you get ideas? It's like, well, what hurts you a lot? What is it that you can't think about without feeling terrible? There's an idea. There's the idea. That's it. And along those lines, it made me think of this YouTube video I saw years ago. It's this lady named Jennifer Kolari, who is a child psychologist, and she was talking about her early days, first kind of, getting into that field, and she'd be at these houses for kids who were, didn't have a home to go back to. So it's like the halfway house type place. And these kids are just like young to mid-teen. And how the prevailing wisdom was to not get too attached, because these kids were just on their way somewhere else. They're just passing through. And if you're too soft to them, or if you're too nice to them, or if they get attached, that's just bad for everybody and that's not the way to go. And this lady, Jennifer, did the opposite. She's like, that seems fucking really dumb. I'm not going to do that. So she would read them stories at night and be nice to them. It's so simple, but it's crazy how simple. Like, I really feel like our society, it's so fucking backwards and so ridiculous and it's just garbage. It might be the best around, but it's fucking trash. And there's so much about it that's not even complicated. It's just so simple. And this story, it's just so simple, but so fucking heartbreaking. It's just like the first time I heard this, I just started crying. I just couldn't not. And it's this 11-year-old girl who was, really tough and really difficult and just a real handful to deal with. But Jennifer started like reading her stories at night and just tucking her in and being nice to her. And the day before this girl was set to leave and go off to, wherever the next step was in this process of just being a displaced child, she held Jennifer's face between her hands and said, like, I just want to just take a moment to look at you because I just want to remember this face. I want to remember the face of somebody who was nice to me. And that is like the saddest thing ever. It's crazy how sad that is. And I was thinking back to that little clip because this story I'm writing now is not directly related to that. I'd forgotten all about it, but that idea had, that idea and many like it have been in me for a long time, of like, what is wrong with this place, and like, this is the shit that's important, and we're just fucking it up, and we're doing such a bad job. And ultimately, in the end of this novel I'm working on, the idea is calamitous failure of like, this war orphan kid is basically going to get her hands on some power, and it's going to go real, real bad. And the kind of surface, easy, sensationalist way to look at it would be like oh shit, this is like the origin of a bad guy. Can you believe this character was the bad guy the whole time? Which is becoming somewhat of a common trope. It's really not that unique of a thing anymore. And it's a surface level version of it. But really, the point of the story is the same as this little YouTube story I'm going to play, is when someone is in trouble and someone is having a hard time and there's no one there to offer support and to help, when they all just want to shuffle you off to the next person and no one wants to take the time and no one wants to care about you, these people will find ways to cope, and they will find ways to overcome their situation, and they'll find ways to get through it. But it's not going to be a way that is good for anybody. It's not going to be what you want. It's not going to be what you like. When people are just ignored and denied, the coping mechanisms they come up with is the type of shit that tears everything down, you know? And that's what this story, that's what it's about. So here's the sad, sad YouTube tale, and that's it for today. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
So ladies and gentlemen, my friend Jennifer Kolari.
Thanks, Erica. So the origin really is, I did my undergraduate degree in psychology. I thought, okay, I want to do something real. I want to be with real kids and real families and real people. So I took a year and I went to work at a group home. So this is a group home actually for street kids. So they're 11 to 16 years old, if you can imagine, who had all been sexually abused, all been physically abused, deeply traumatized. And I'm hired to work at this group home. I have no idea what I'm doing. They knew it. They ran rings around me. They were so smart. I had no idea what I was doing with these kids, and really lost control of the whole situation. But what was interesting at night, when these tough, tough kids that were so scary and could be so prickly went to bed, they turned back into kids, right? So the jammies came on, the makeup came off, the teddy bears came out, and they turned into children. And the sort of philosophy at this group home was just put them to bed, that's it, don't get too attached to these kids. It makes no sense because they're not there for very long, so don't get them all attached to you because you're just going to leave or they're going to leave. None of that made sense to me. These were babies, these were kids. So I couldn't just close the door and say goodnight. I sat on their beds. I read them bedtime stories. I rubbed their backs. I sang them lullabies. And these tough, scary kids loved it. Absolutely loved it. They melted. And I melted doing this with them. It was really beautiful. And I noticed the next day when it was time for me to get those kids to do the things that I needed them to do, they were much more likely to do it for me. Now this got the staff in a bit of a ruffle. Oh, she's being too nice. She's being too soft with them. They're going to walk all over her. She's a bleeding heart. This is ridiculous. But that actually wasn't what was happening. There was a connection. We had a relationship. And if you were here yesterday for Dr. Neufeld, he talked about kids will be good and want to be good for you when you give them your heart, when you're connected to them. And that's exactly what happened with these kids. So it really changed what happened for me. And there was one little girl there. She was really a particularly tough kid and loved the bedtime routine, absolutely loved the lullabies. And she was leaving the next day. And she put her hands on my cheeks and she said, I just want to remember this face, the face of someone who cares about me. And I never forgot that moment. That was a moment when I realized, okay, connection, compassion, empathy, these are powerful things. These change behavior. And I knew that very second I wanted to be a social worker. There was never a doubt in my mind after that. It was a very, very beautiful moment.